Sky Howdy, and welcome back to another episode of World Bigfoot Radio.
Here's this, we're at the superstructure here at the Wilderness Park here in Lincoln, and just trying to get an idea here of the tree size. This is a good 10 feet off the ground, and then we have an arch. We have a large tree here placed as a support. As you can see, it stretches way over here. I need to get one of those sticks so I can talk as I'm showing it. So we've got an arch structure here. It's pulled over a tree. So here's the arch. It's held in place by a branch pulled down, a tree branch pulled down. The other one's sitting over top of that to hold that in place. Different angles here. And the one tree is pulled over also to balance that structure, as you can see. So there's several balance pieces here, and then as you see they're pulled into this arch. So they're all supporting this arch that is held down. Back here. And this tree here is broken from the tree that is resting on top of the arch. It all comes together. So that arch then is right over top of that tree and held down by this large branch right over top of this line. So you see that. Very large arch. Let's get 10 feet from there off the ground. And Rob, why don't you go stand next to that tree there? So this tree is broke. Stand next to the middle tree. Yeah, there you go. Lift your hand in the air and tell me how tall you are. You're 5 feet 9 inches?
Yeah.
So how high would you say that arch is above you?
Oh, I would say about 9 feet.
You're raising, no, this right above you, the arch straight above you. How high would you say that is? If that's 9 feet, then how high would that be?
I would say about 15, 16 feet.
Okay, I'd say you're pretty accurate. So yeah, that's a big arch, isn't it?
Yeah.
That is amazing. So we've got an alpha male structure here, and like I said, that tree was pulled down. This other tree is arched over it, and they're all kind of woven in place here. See this tree here. The sun's kind of right there, but you can see how it's put in place. It's one large superstructure. So this does not occur in nature. This is a structure made by a alpha male Sasquatch, and he's marking his territory to show any other Sasquatches that come into this area. This is what I can do. And so here's a video of his very large arch, which is almost hard to get it all in this frame. Very good. There you have it.
Absolutely. And that's another thing that we did an episode with Rich where we were talking about Bigfoot throughout Europe. And we have covered that many times. I've had Bigfoot in Europe, Robert Boston on here, and I've also had Tom Coburn recently doing research by his channel, Trails in the Woods, doing research in a different part of Germany than Robert was in, and several other guests from over there have been on. So, there is a history of Bigfoot over there in Europe, and most Americans never would think of that.
Yes, there absolutely is. And of course, in Europe, you have all of in the churches. And this was another thing that I had really had helped me build my research, is the Black Plague. I initially had done research about contagions, I believe, cold populations of the Bigfoot and Sasquatch and North America. And we saw that at the same time period about 500 years ago, during the time that Native American populations had dipped. And so I tied that research. I'm thinking that they had to have affected either their behavior or affect them physically and pull their numbers. We saw the same thing happen with the Black Plague in Europe. And prior to that, we had them on churches. They were there was the hunt for the woodwoos was a royal sport, and you had a great deal of history in Europe of these beings. Matter of fact, the Green Man and all of these things were on coins. There's a great deal of research that was kind of suppressed post plague, and it was either that these interactions no longer took place, or the numbers were cold, or they just of the Europeans. Of course.
You know, I don't know if we ever brought this up when we were doing the show on European Bigfoot, but you see a lot of those carving statues and stuff of a woodwoe, a Bigfoot-looking character, and usually he's got a big club. And these are all over the place in these cathedrals and stuff, these really ancient cathedrals. And if you look on the outside of the cathedral, it's protected by gargoyles. There's these scary demonic-looking things on the outside protecting it. But they'll actually have depictions of the woodwoes inside the edifice itself, which I found to be very interesting, because you don't put the depictions of the bad guys inside the church.
Absolutely. And an interesting connection with the Green Man, and of course, Prince Charles, when he became king, on his invitation, he prominently had the Green Man, the image of the Green Man. And the Green Man is this nature type figure similar to Bigfoot, but it may be one of the same, because when we start talking about spiritual or metaphysical existence, there are parallels there. And so there's really a fascinating, and even on the different types, some of the famous, there was the fight in the forest. There was pencil drawings that were made during that time period that documented these interactions. The fight in the forest is a really good one, where you have these knights all strewn about, and a large Bigfoot type figure, a woodwoos, with a woven leaf hat, wearing that, and he's holding on to a tree, and he's basically hit all these people, knocked them out, and it's pretty anatomically correct, because if you look at the size of the knights compared to him, it looks like he's probably like 9 feet, and they may be 5.5 or 6 feet tall. So
granted, it's hard to tell how tall some of the knights are, because they're strewn about the ground.
They are. I would say they lost that battle. But again, these weren't just things that they were writing about or drawing that were imaginary figures. These were things that they absolutely had working knowledge of. And when there was a documentation like this was almost like newsworthy, of like, 5 nights got a beating from the woodwoos. And so
that basically was news, because the guy that got commissioned to do the pen and ink rendition of it was actually commissioned by the knight that survived the fight, because he wanted the bragging rights. And so he went and hired this artist to actually do a couple drawings of it. And according to this story, slavishly, like, basically stood there over his shoulder to make sure he got all the details right. So yeah, this is, 500 years ago, some knight paid off a scribe, an artist, to do this illustration for him so he could make copies of it, send them to his friends. Here's what happened to me last month.
Yes. Yeah. So this was very, a visual depiction of things, made it fact in some ways. And so having that documented is something we're still talking about today. So it was very important to have that sort of thing. So Europe had a long history. They also had that same sort of epoch of disease contagion of the plague that also, and we had smallpox that was decimated, but there was like 50 million Europeans died during the same period that Native Americans were perishing here in North America. So it was tragic for the populations in both situations. And I just thought it was synonymous to possibly culling the populations, or at least the behavior of them interacting, because really that epoch that you see from there, you saw a separation between a lot of the interactions. In North America, we had Native Americans that had a name for literally every tribe had a name for them. So they were, and putting them on totem poles and that sort of thing. They were doing the same things that Europeans were doing, just a little differently. And most of their stories were done orally, but it's every bit as in their culture. It was every bit as validating to share these stories and retell these stories. So I just found that fascinating early on, and then of course it did play into my Zana and the Black Plague, and that's when I made the connection to the Muke 7E. And I was able to, after I gave was able to give this speech on that in 2018 at the Nebraska Bigfoot Conference, I was able to get connected to Dr. Bertzeff. But before that, on this timeline, I wanted to cover one other figure that I had interacted with, and somebody who has passed away this year, Dr. Meldrum, Jeff, as he would say, you should call him when you meet him. He came to the Omaha Res back in January 4th or 5th of 2017 with the Bigfoot search team, which was basically they were putting together a documentary, and it was the Ricketts family who own Ameritrade, and the senator, the Ricketts, is a part of that family, former governor. Well, it was his uncle Gary who came up there, and they literally flew Meldrum in on this airplane, private plane. It's like $10,000 an hour. Of course, it was their personal plane, and it was quite an experience. It was really cold. It was bitterly cold, below zero temperatures. And that was something I'm going to post that on my YouTube site, the actual recordings of that, of those interactions and what we were doing at that time, because I have a good few hours of recording, and so it will be, nobody's heard these recordings because I've just had them on a CD since 2017, but it'll be a live kind of, I wore my typical
squid mics giant squid mics that I wear, and stereo, and I recorded all of that interaction of us hiking up and doing a night op, and the first experience that Meldrum had shared with me when we showed him this asterisk stick structure that Barry Dee had found earlier. We took him in there. This was of course middle of the night, probably midnight. We hiked up into this area, and there were logs all over that blocked this road. And I had been there in August, and so this was January. In August, this road was plowed clean. I mean, you can absolutely access a huge truck through this road. Well, by January, this road had so many logs and trees pushed in that you would need to have a power saw to cut most of them away, and you would still have to hike through that. You couldn't get a vehicle through there. But I made the comment to Meldrum, because he didn't have a reference to that earlier, that these were not here until just these months in between here. They clearly don't want us in there. And he was kind of skeptical, he was always one to be the skeptic, which I get that. But I was adamant that they were putting those in here, and this was a reason they didn't want us in here. So we got up to where this asterisk structure was, and this whole time I'm recording it. So this is something your viewers can listen to at some point. I'll let you know when I post that, so you can share it too. But we get up there, and Meldrum comments that he was aware of tree and stick structures, but he believes this is the first one. And I have FLIR pictures of him grabbing hold of it and really looking at it, that because it was an asterisk with like all of these,
right,
very large, all of these just woven in there. And he was like holding on to it and grabbing hold of it. And he was quite fascinated by it. And later, when I had sent him a video of a burst of light that we had, which I'll talk about that, he commented that was the first time he had really, he called it trace evidence. He wasn't going to give it the full on, this was made by a Bigfoot, but he was willing to put it in the trace evidence category. So with Meldrum, though, with his passing, what I wanted to say is it's a long line of what we would call hominologists, and I'll include him in that, because what I want to draw from that is that Boris Porshnev, who was the Russian researcher who came up with the term relict hominid, he had taken his research from Carl Linus, who had written the Systema Natura, who had Homo troglodyte in there. Was one of the first times it was listed as a part of nature, cave dwelling man. So Boris Porshnev came up with that term, relict hominid. Dmitry Bayanov and also Dr. Burtsev, along with other researchers, had encouraged Jeff to create the relict hominid inquiry. And so when he did that, that was really an extension of a long line from Carl Linus to all the way to Meldrum of what are hominologists. And I know Dr. Meldrum was an anthropologist, and he was an academic in that capacity. But the point being that the science is really the relevance in this whole thing. What you and I do, Duke, is great, but ultimately it's going to need to be the science that picks this up as we move forward. And I think
we do all the work, they take all the credit. That's how it goes.
It is. And sometimes we're leading the horse to water, but the reality is when you look at this historically, and this is what I wanted to bring up about Meldrum, is that I disagreed with some of the things that he said, and I time will tell whether the mid-tarsal break is a thing or not. There's researchers that disagree with that or think there's at least other options there. But he did draw a lot of attention to Bigfoot and even the footprints and some of the evidence of them. And so despite what you think of him, and I was upset with him because of my theory that I really wanted him to help out when we were looking at doing research with Dr. Birdseff and getting the DNA for Zana. We wanted Dr. Meldrum to be a part of it, and he simply was not ready to look in that direction. So that was something that which personally frustrated me, but I don't hold it against him. What I'm looking at now is a historical reference to him, and the fact that this relic hominid inquiry existed and that he did it. I just want people to be aware that there's a long history there of researchers who helped shape that. Dmitry Bayanov has passed away. I have his last paper that he written, and someday I'll publish that with with his directions that he had given me. And so he had,
unbeknownst to most American listeners, Dmitry Bayanov also turned out some Bigfoot books. You can get them, and they're in English.
Yes, Hancock House Publishing, which was also their wildlife fund, was something that we had approached at that time to try to do the research for Bigfoot and get some validity. But what Bayanov had written, which he's on the relic hominid inquiry, some of his articles, in 2019, he asked me to be a part of writing the history, application, and definition of what Bigfoot is, and to turn that into Wikimedia or Wikipedia. Well, and at that time I did that, and I'm very proud of the work we did together. Of course, Wikipedia would not publish it and put it on there. Later, I think we've all found out that Wikipedia has some inner political agenda that was quite possibly preventing this from occurring.
Outside of the fact that it's wildly inaccurate on a regular basis anyway. So, no big loss there.
Yes, that's what I thought too. It was disappointing, but I know it was something that he really wanted to do. So essentially what we did was I got to work with a lot of these great researchers, and from some of that research that I had done, and when I gave my speech at the Nebraska Bigfoot Conference, I had made a connection to Zana and this Muke7E, which is in sub-Saharan Africans. It's an archaic, very small percentage of sub-Saharan Africans, similar to what Denisovian is in a percentage of Asians, and what we've seen as Neanderthal, and a small percentage of Caucasians, of Homo sapiens. And so you've had these groups, and so we essentially what was happening in the DNA is that we've seen a lot of work in DNA and Caucasian and Asians, but we had not seen a whole lot in sub-Saharan Africa. And in 2017, there was this Muke7 that they identified that was an outlier. And it all kind of came together for me to tie that in to Zana, because one of the things Dr. Sykes had identified when he did this study is that Zana was connected to sub-Saharan Africa. And a lot of people that are familiar with this study only know the bear side of it, that he said a bear. But Zana, they did DNA for her, and she essentially led them to the sub-Saharan Africa theory that he had. His theory was, one, a slave, could have been a slave. The second theory was that it was this essentially a ancient hominid that had came up from that had interbred in Africans, sub-Saharan Africa, and left this ancient introgression DNA marker. And so I really, when I read that, I thought this Muke7E could be that. And that's when when I gave the speech on that in 2018. Daniel Perez of the Bigfoot Times got me connected to Dr. Sykes and to Dr. Birdseff, and that's how I kind of got tied in with them. So my research built Currently, I've done some things with artificial intelligence, and I'll be putting that on my website as far as expanding this research with utilizing these studies that have been done. I think that's why I brought up the point of scientists. We're ultimately going to have the scientists involved, but there's some interesting validations of what this research has brought to life, and it hasn't been disproven yet. As a matter of fact, the research that I've been doing using AI, and I think I want to give this caveat to AI. I think there's multiple levels of what AI is being utilized, and the stuff you and I get to use is obviously not the top grade.
No.
The other side to that is these AI is utilizing this gibberlink, which is a communication amongst itself, and I think that's going on essentially, that they're communicating constantly at this level, and you or I are not a factor in any of that. And the information that is filtered down to us is very watered down to what's going on there. But that's just my side point. But I have gleaned some very good things, and if we know in 2021, Dr. Bertseff, he was here on his birthday, and like the next day was the day where they released the study in Copenhagen that he had done. And that study, which is one that I was trying to help get funded years before, that study validated that it was the skull of Zana and the skull of Quit, her son. It validated that they are maternal mother and son, and so that genetic link was validated there, and we knew that's now a fact. And I don't know enough people are aware of that. When I ran the DNA study to confirm some of my own research, it absolutely pulled that up, and it made that point that they are genetic, and that my hypothesis is getting can be validated by these points. So it's exciting to see it still alive, but there's going to be this handoff, like I said, whatever happens. I think it's the end of like the Meldrum era now. We've seen this whole AI thing, along with scientists, are probably going to take this to the next level. And it's something we've been waiting to happen. Us researchers, we're going to continue to do what we do, but I think we're going to get in order to get to that next stage in this research, it's going to have to be a merge of science and AI. To really dig down deep. And that was the problem that Bertseff ran into in the Copenhagen study, is that ancient DNA marker is difficult to find. Now, they were able to do validate the maternal lineage, but they were not able to find ancient DNA. there's been some caveats to that because they didn't really know what they were looking for. And since then, we have a much better idea of what we're looking for, and we will be finding that connection sometime in the future. So I'm excited about that. So that was one thing that kind of grew my research and got me. And we've covered all this too in past shows that you've done, Duke. This whole thing has been a process for me, and I've just been very very elated to be a part of it. And when I look back at it, I almost have to kick myself. I really truly believe there's things that go on in this metaphysical world that kind of help move us forward. And one of the things I had done, I was born up in South Dakota, and I went a pilgrimage to the Spirit Mound, and I had done that in 2017, just a month before I was able to develop this emergent homid theory and MUC7E. And I'd gone up there, and the Spirit Mound is where the Native Americans were very afraid to go there. There were little people there. I know you've had Gary Wayne on your show, and he talks about being the keepers of knowledge. And I didn't know all this, but when I went up there and did all of that, I went up and I hiked there, I prayed. And I remember when I was a very young kid driving by the Spirit Mound, it was just a cattle lot, and there was a bunch of cattle that were up on the top of this mound. And throughout my life, I've had these sort of images come into my head that just stick with me. And that was an image that kind of stuck with me when I went there. It was like, it's this deja vu kind of thing. I remember this, but there was cattle here, And so these images come to me. I don't claim to have photographic memory, but there's some sort of visual that I can associate with historical things in my own life that help always give reference to things. So when I hiked up there, it was kind of a pilgrimage, and we had some strange things. A friend that was with me, we prayed at the prayer tree. He lost his phone, and we couldn't find it. And we found it on the trail on the way back, just laying on the trail, and we looked everywhere. We had some strange things that we associate with the little people. And I took a piece of the chalk mound. It's a chalk mound. Lewis and Clark identified that area, and we know they were there because it's still there today. They stood there, and although the Missouri River snakes around now, we don't know all the locations that they were at, but we know for a fact they were there. And they didn't have any of these spears thrown at them. But I can say with my experience going there, it was significant because I did a prayer. I was being respectful. And I can't say it was the little people, but there was a huge breakthrough in my research a month later. And, I go up to the Omaha Res, this sort of thing. I'll tell a story to my brothers that are Native American, and they absolutely think that that's the case. I'm not expecting everybody to believe that, but it's fortuitous that it happened during that time period. And then hearing Gary Wayne talk about the little people and they're keepers of knowledge and that sort of thing. Did not expect that to happen, but that was something that happened, and that was a part of my life. With this Bigfoot research. Since then, a lot of things also that have occurred. I've been in your documentary. I've been in a couple other documentaries, and I've had the experience to share a lot of these stories with a greater audience. But one of the things that I've always enjoyed was coming back to World Bigfoot Radio and be able to do a show with you, dude, because it really gives me an opportunity for people to go back and find those episodes and dig in and watch them. I know some of those we had tens of thousands of views, some of those episodes, the early ones. So it's exciting to go back and see that those continue to be out.
Yeah, for my viewers, the majority of which are newer viewers, you probably missed most of these. So you may actually want to go back and check them out, because if you want the science-laden breakdown on Bigfoot phenomena, Rich is one of the guys that'll bring it to you. As you can tell by what he's been talking about for the last half hour or so, he just happens to know most all the scientists that have done any research on Bigfoot. And he's the only guy I know that's had not just Jeff Meldrum, but also Dr. Burtsev out in the field with him. So, yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yes. Igor was here twice. In 2018, he came after I'd given my speech, and I got to talk to him, and he came up here, and we just had a great time. And then in 2021, when he came back, that was when that study, the Copenhagen study, was released. The day he was here, that was just published internationally. And it just gives me goosebumps thinking that the correlation of him coming back and being on the Omaha Res with me, spending a night in a tent, was the exact day that this research that we've been talking about for years was getting published and finally completed. And he started that in 2018. That's when he took the skull of Xana and to Foot. And mind you, those were the only artifacts left. Their bodies, the remainder of those bodies were lost in a fire where they had been kept. So they didn't have anything other than those skulls left. That's all they have. But that research then lives on because the Copenhagen study did the complete genome of them. And so any scientist could reach out to them and work with them. And I really believe that next level will be this utilizing AI as a deep genome research and finding this ancient DNA. So essentially what I had proposed as what will be a marker was this MUC7E, which is a mucus, a variant of this mucus that we all have that kills bacteria. And in sub-Saharan Africans, it is a variant that's very wildly different. There's just a small percentage of them that were carrying it. And we believe
they got like acid spit or something.
It's very different. And, to me, it also kind of lends to that stickiness that you'll see Bigfoot leave on when they touch something. They leave this kind of film.
Oh, their layer of grease. Yeah. Greasy.
And I think all of this is kind of tied together, but their salivary glands, absolutely, this mucus gland is very different. So I'm assuming it's much more robust, but it's able to kill different bacteria and whatnot. But this is what kind of genetic marker that we would be looking for to separate them, and how you would do this deep genome search, because that integration that took place, however long ago that was, is still in this population, and it's different than other Homo sapiens. No other Homo sapiens have that. From there on is what I believed happened is that whatever the progenitor of this integration had started interbreeding with other Homo sapiens as Homo sapiens emerged from their locations. And of course, we know now that not all Homo sapiens were out of Africa, that they were in different parts of, and we had Denisovian and Neanderthal. And the Denisovian DNA is responsible for the Sherpas DNA that allow them to be in high altitudes. So that in itself is interesting. So theoretically, if there was a in the Congo, a sub-Saharan African hominid come out of there and start interbreeding with other hominids around, and it got some Denisovian DNA. Then this could allow them to become the Yeti, possibly. So the theory is that this interbreeding is added to the admixture and the ad flow of the genetic flow of what these beings are, but their original source was had an introgression at some point in sub-Saharan Africans that may lead us to this some other future ability to genetically create more of an understanding of them. And anything we could use in science to help validate their existence is really significant in that step. So there are other things that I've discovered that we could utilize that will help find that out too, help find those markers. And some of them I have to kind of keep privately right now because I am working with some in the scientific community and trying to, I don't want to step on any toes at this point. So it's exciting time for me. And that's one of the reasons, Duke, I haven't been on your show or haven't been available much is because some of my research I've been doing has continued in the dark, or has continued kind of under the radar. And my hopes is to bring this to fruition at some point, and that we could have an exciting, breakthrough that has some genetics that really proves their existence. And we've had Melba Ketchum, we've had people do this sort of research, but there are some genetic markers, and now that we have Zana and Quit and that whole genome done. We know from Savante Pablo that when he did the Denisovian, it was just a little, like a finger or something, very small bone, that all of this stuff only requires a very small contribution from the research public. And so getting scientists involved, if you have something like that, is going to help grow this. And like I said, AI is one part of it, but you really have to have a scientist that know how to put that information into AI and utilize all that and run these deep genetic testing at the lab to do that. So exciting times, dude.
Now that Dr. Meldrum has passed, we still got Dr. Burtsev out running around there, and Burtsev's older than him, although in considerably better shape in his 80s and still hikes in pup tent camps, probably flop down in a snowbank and sleep, knowing what he's like. So hopefully he's fairly indestructible, and we should have Dr. Burtsev around for a while. And even older than he is, shout out here to a guy who just had a birthday yesterday or the day before, from when we're recording this, which will be quite a while back by the time you guys see it. Happy 94th birthday to, Bob Gimlin.
Yeah,
a man so famous that he himself became a measure of Bigfoot height, because now you can measure Bigfoot height in Gimlins. 1 Gimlin equals 5 feet.
He is just a great. He told me his story at the conference, or he told his story at the conference when I spoke that year, and in 2018. And it was fascinating to hear, them eat tack and ride a horse. They were just eating this tack. That's all they had. Yeah. And they rode for 2 weeks. And, you could really get a sense of how they would have snuck up on Patty. This was not just people trotting out in the woods on a weekend. These were people who were living in these forests, in this mountain regions for weeks on horses. And the footage that Patterson got really was somebody as a marksman who knew how to fire a rifle was able to do that. So there were circumstances, maybe Olympic athlete type, bringing all that together. So fascinating story, and all of that. The other side of that is the Russians did a lot of research on that video. And they were able to prove without question that it was real through the physiology and mechanics of movement. that absolutely authenticate that as a real video. When I was
and that was a
child,
long time before anybody over here was proving it through biomechanics.
yeah, this was in the early 70s.
Yeah.
And they validated it. They absolutely had science. And it was only our own media that had prevented that from really allowing this research to move anywhere in this country. And it's just a shame. Shame on the media. Shame on whoever was behind that, who covered all of this up, essentially, because it's taking out now to catch up. But they proved that was real. And it was something that, as a very young child, when I saw In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy and saw the video the first time, I knew that was not a man in a suit. I mean, a child at that age could see that. I knew it. And the science that the Russians had done absolutely proved it. But we were hoodwinked. Our media chose to make light of it, and hoax was for whatever reason. And it is not. Anybody out there today that believes that is a hoax, you need to read up on it, because it's absolutely fact, and the Russians knew that a long time ago. So,
here's another thing they always bring up. They always try and make it sound like it was just a chance encounter, and Roger and Bob just got lucky. And that couldn't be further from the truth. They already had inside information that there were Bigfoot in that area. That's why Roger got Bob and his horse trailer and the horses together to go there, because they knew there were a Bigfoot in that area. And it wasn't like his first rodeo, so to speak. Roger had already been out doing Bigfoot research for 5 freaking years consistently. And he just figured, if nothing else, they could shoot some B-reel video for a documentary he was going to make at some point while they were there. And they just freaking completely got lucky, and they managed to get Patty on video.
Yeah, it was truly their efforts and their work, and hearing that whole story is remarkable. That they survived it with the flood that happened too. So fascinating. Just another person that I got to meet and got to shake his hand, and actually Harriet, who does the Bigfoot conference in Nebraska, she introduced me to Bob, and then Bob immediately wanted me to take a picture of him and Harriet together. So I took a picture of him, and Harriet turned around and took a picture of Bob and I. And it was all good fun. She was telling him that I'm the Bigfoot guy in Nebraska, and I was very humbled by that. And he was just a great person. He signed some of the stuff that he had there. He signed it for me, and he told me about his pickup truck and the story about that. And he saw it around town after he had sold it and wished he didn't sell it. Just a great guy. And he was put through, again, this media hoax, which it was not Bob Gimlin, it was the media who was hoaxing this, really put this poor man through a great deal of consternation his entire life after that. And shame on them for doing that, and for hiding the truth from a great deal of us now.
Agree. So, quick before we go on here, if you look over my shoulder, you can see a picture there of Bob Gimlin at Black Creek. There he is. And it's signed by Bob Gimlin, because I got him to sign it. And I've had a chance to meet Bob several times. And this is a kind of an interesting thing here, because I remember seeing that video when I was a kid. Same reaction as you. Me and my brother looked at it and went, "That's real." And the adults in the room went, "It's a guy in a suit." We went, "No, that's real." So years later, Bob Gimlin's out touring around, and the Big Sky Bigfoot Conference is happening. This is the second or third one. And I was there in the parking lot with one of my friends who had just been at the International Bigfoot Conference. And when he was there, I told him, "Grab me a shirt." So we're both standing out in the parking lot with International Bigfoot Conference shirts on. And who comes rolling up in the parking lot but Russell Acord and Bob Gimlin. So, of course, Russell notices that we've got the T-shirts from his conference that just happened a couple of weeks before. So he comes walking over to say hi, and he's talking to my buddy. And, of course, Bob comes trotting over, too, and he doesn't really know me. I know who he is, of course, but I've got the shirt on, and he was just there. So he sticks his arm out, and he says, "How you doing, partner?" And that was the most least likely way I expected ever that I would meet Bob Gimlin standing out in a parking lot having a cigarette and have him walk up and go, "How you doing, partner?" and put his hand out to say.
Great guy, great experience. I'm glad that he's getting the opportunity that he had. Russell, somebody we met back in the day at the Bigfoot conference too. He was a speaker there with you.
Yeah.
And he's gone on to do some things with Expedition Bigfoot. The producer of that show, RPG, came and did a documentary on Omaha Res that I was a part of. So it's just interesting all these years later, Duke, how we are quantum entwined with our past and present and future, I would say, Duke.
Well, you got to figure that, at some point, most of the better Bigfoot researchers are going to run into each other. So it's not kind of really surprising in that way. What was surprising to me was having Bob Gimlin walk across the parking lot and go, "How you doing, partner?" and put his hand out. I got a chance to talk to him several times since then. But for the first time, that was like, there's no way I'm ever going to meet Bob Gimlin, have him walk up and then, say, how you doing, partner?
Yeah, great experience. And, again, with the loss of Dr. Meldrum, I'll be posting some stuff on my YouTube once I can edit that. And I'll have some of these studies I recently did posted on the NOX GIGAS study. And, in reflection, 10 years later, I did not, I started this very humbly, just out of frustration that I was unable to get a lot of my stuff on the Blue Forum and in the BFRO. And I'm thankful that I went this direction because, even during my interactions early with Dr. Bertseff, my website was shut down for a day until I had to communicate with Google, because it's on Google web hosting. They turned it back on, but there was this whole thing of fear of Russians and whatnot, and I got tied up into it. And either that or my research was getting too close to the truth. But I've just faced some adversity back then too, and I thought, well, man, all my stuff is gone. I was very concerned about it, but got it turned back on, and it's still up and running 10 years now. It carries my research prior to me starting. Which was many years before that. And all of the, I have links to all Duke's shows, but also just all of the researchers we talked about here today. There's pictures and information, and much more information than we're able to share here. And
so go check it out.
These other stuff. Yeah, come check it out. And Duke, I appreciate you having me back on the show. And I know you're going to probably show some old videos or something. You got a pile of information from me all these years, but I really just appreciate you having me on this show all the many times that you have over the years. And I'm just grateful that our friendship continues. And like I said, I look forward to this for many years of this and some fruition coming out of this for science and for the hominids around the world.
Right on. Well, hopefully you get back out here. It's your turn now. The first time you were out here, and the second time I was in Nebraska, and the third and the fourth time.
Yes.
It's your turn now, so you got to come back out here and do some more Bigfooting out here again, and we'll take you up to where they make the gigantic structures.
Yes. Yeah. So I get it. I'm tagged, and now I'm it, and I have to come tag you.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it didn't quite work out. I was supposed to have Bigfoot in Germany, Robert Boston, and MK Davis here at the same time this summer, but MK got sick and couldn't make it. So he's planning on coming up here for the first time next summer. Bigfoot in Germany is planning on coming back next summer. And that might be a good time for you to show up and visit too.
That would be awesome. But yeah, I'm going to have to go because my tree guy has texted me and he's here, so I knew that would be cutting it close.
Well, we got it done. So thanks everybody for being here. Don't forget to hit that like button, and please leave comments after the show. That's what drives it in the algorithm, so that people will actually get to see this thing and it gets recommended. So yeah, hit that like button. Make sure to leave comments. And everything beyond that, thank you guys for all being here, and looking forward to having you back here again next week. Thanks for being here, Rich.
Thank you, Duke. Aho.
Ahu yate.
So make sure that you're kind to everyone. Safety first, last, and always. Pay it forward. Don't be mean to people if you don't have to be. Don't flip off the mountain giant. Don't poke Dogman with a stick. Don't punt the puck, would you? And for God's sake, whatever you do, do not hug the Wookiee.